Individual bonds or a bond fund? It's an easy choice. The major factors in deciding whether to use a bond fund come down to convenience, costs, and control over maturity. You don't need much diversification if you use CDs and treasuries, and you can own these with no purchase fees or annual expenses. Other individual bonds, on the other hand, have spreads between the bid price and asking price from 1/2 all the way up to 5%, and you will, unfortunately, have no idea you are paying these hefty fees to your broker. For most of us, a bond fund is a more efficient way of investing in bonds than buying individual securities. Bond mutual funds are just like stock mutual funds in that you put your money into a pool with other investors to be invested professionally. This can be done at a very low cost. The thing that some find confusing is that generally bond funds never mature, so that while there's not a specific date when they'll return what you invested, the fund has a price and you can sell it at any time. Remember, we don't expect this price to appreciate like we would with the stock of a growing company. We care about the total return, which we'll talk more about later, and sometimes we care about how sensitive that price is to interest rate changes. That sensitivity is best expressed by its duration. A short-term bond fund is less sensitive to interest rate changes than a long-term bond fund. Now it's time for some fun. I'll give you 2 facts. You choose the fact that's true. Here's one. An interest rate increase can be good for investors. The other. A bond fund is just as risky as a stock fund. This is false. First of all, a terrible year in the stock market is when the value of your investments drop 40 or 50%. Whereas a terrible year in the bond market might be if interest rates suddenly jump a few percent, causing the value of all bonds to drop. Hang on though, if you chose a bond or bond fund that you'll hold longer than its duration, then rising interest rates are actually your friend. This is true. If you reinvest dividends at the new higher interest rate, then you come out ahead if you hold bonds for longer than their duration. Let me make an example to illustrate this. This investor buys a 30-year 5% bond at par, and seconds after its issues, yields suddenly rise to 10%. This bond is now worth less than 53 cents on the dollar. However, since this bond throws off coupons which can be reinvested at the new higher yield, it takes our investor less than 11 years to break even. So this defines the bond's duration. And note that because of the coupons, the duration is always less than the maturity, sometimes considerably so. To reiterate, after 11 years, this investor is better off for the fall in price because of the rise in yield. The duration is the period of time at which you are indifferent to interest rate changes. Let's stop and recap this series. Bonds are essential to every investment portfolio, even when the yields are at record low levels, because stocks are so risky. Owning the right amount of bonds helps make that stock market risk palatable. They're the perfect investment when you need money at a specific time, and bonds that are uncorrelated with the stock market are a very attractive diversifier. Stocks, bonds, and money market funds are each very different, and we took a look at this to introduce this current series about bonds. CDs are a special type of bond, and we looked at how and why sometimes CDs are even better than bonds. Then we talked about bonds and their 2 major attributes, the quality or credit rating of the issuer and the length of the bond. We saw how a bond price is tied to the interest rate and introduced the concept of duration to describe price sensitivity. It is easy to buy CDs and individual bonds from your bank or broker and make a bond ladder. This is interesting for the lowest possible annual expenses and when you want them to mature on a specific date for some reason. For most of us, a low-cost bond fund is the way to go, and we looked at how duration helps us decide between short, intermediate, and long-term bond funds. Please give us a thumbs up if this video was helpful to you, and to subscribe to our channel, click here. Next, Learn more about the risks and returns of bonds and tips about how to manage them. Thanks for watching.